Today, we're going to be going deep into the subject of infidelity and why we might cheat in a relationship. And I have the beautiful privilege of bringing on an amazing guest by the name of Gay Hendricks. And Gay has written over 50 books. He is a psychologist and an expert in relationships. So I'm super excited to have him on. Essentially, this channel is to support anyone that is in an affair dynamic to create that change. So you might be the other woman, the mistress, the other man. You might be in a relationship with someone that is married, or someone that is, you might be someone that is cheating. And this is a very confusing experience to navigate. And my whole intention of this channel is to create a safe place for you to be understood, to be heard, to get the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding that you're so badly seeking. And I hope that this channel can provide that for you. And I know for sure that this interview is going to be supportive in helping you gain clarity, helping you leave the listening to this interview with a more refreshed understanding around where to go to from here. And so without further ado, let's get into this interview, and we're going to be covering topics of commitment, why we might self-sabotage ourselves or fear commitment, how do we come back from conflict in a relationship, is the relationship worth resolving, so many different things that we're going to be covering, and it's going to be a good one. So take care. I hope you enjoy. Bye for now. Alrighty, welcome on, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have Gay Hendricks, and I'm super excited to have Gay on. Gay is a psychologist by background and has written over 50 books, right, Gay?
Yep.
Welcome on. You've been very busy. Welcome on. Can you please introduce yourself and what you do and what you're all about?
Yes, my wife Katie and I on the book covers, it's Kathleen Hendricks, but she goes by Katie around the house. So Katie and I, actually, we just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. And so from the very beginning of our relationship, we wanted to work together because both of us were psychologists and we were both interested in personal transformation and relationship transformation. And we also do quite a bit of work in the business world. A lot of our students are involved in corporate transformation, where they go into businesses and help make. And so we live in Southern California in a mountain valley called Ojai, which is about 90 minutes from Los Angeles. And we have a beautiful home here and 8 beautiful, magnificent oak trees on our property. And also we're very into gardening, and we have about 1,500 succulents on the property. In fact, we bought out a succulent nursery, a cactus nursery that was going out of business. And so we bought their entire inventory and had our gardeners put it up. So
wow.
And yeah, we're having the time of our lives. We've been living over here in Ojai, that's our town, for about 20 years now. But my wife is from Southern California. She was born down in Manhattan Beach.
Beautiful. You seem like such a wholesome couple on so many levels. You have a deep desire to impact people's lives, and then you're just grounded back to earth into your own love and connection to what you value in your life as well. So that is beautiful. Thank you for joining. I'm excited. I'm just going to shift this view to gallery to make it a bit more even. So today we're going to be talking about infidelity and the upper limit problem, which is something that you teach, and why people may feel compelled to cheat, or how to really understand why we might get into these kind of situations when it doesn't feel in alignment with our values. And so can you teach us more about what the upper limit problem is and how it relates to ourselves in our relationships?
Yes, the upper limit problem is the tendency to sabotage yourself when things are going well. And the upper limit problem, like here's a classic example. is a person wins the lottery and gets $100,000, let's say, and the statistics are terrible about how people operate after they've won the lottery. So sometimes up to 50% of the people are worse off the next year than they were before the year they won the lottery.
Really?
And so why is that? And so I started studying things like that way back 40 years ago. And I was working particularly at the time with some very smart executives in Silicon Valley. And that's the place here in the US where a lot of our high-tech companies are, Apple and Intel and all of those, and Facebook and Google. And so I was working with these extremely brilliant people, and they would have a big breakthrough at work, and then they'd go home and get into a horrendous blowout argument with their wife or their kids or something at home. So they would have this big high, and then they wouldn't be able to sustain it, sometimes a whole day, before they would find some way to mess up and bring themselves back down to where they were before. And so I started looking at this and trying to figure out why that was. And it's particularly, you notice that particularly among successful people. Yeah. That it's probably true with unsuccessful people too, but I notice it particularly because these people were so brilliant, and yet they do these things after they were not so brilliant. So I started calling it the upper limit problem. And I started observing it in all sorts of different settings with my private clients and in businesses and that kind of thing. And I finally figured out what the problem was. And the problem is that the upper limit problem, no matter how you do it, is all based on fear. Mm. And what happens is, let's say, here's a good one. This just happened to a client of mine a while back. He had a big investment for a long time in a business, and it didn't go anywhere. And so he'd kind of forgotten about it. And one day he got a call and said, "Hey, we've decided to sell the company, and you're going to finally cash out your stock." And so it was almost $1 million. I think it was $780, something like that. So it was a pretty good sum of money.
Yeah.
What did he do that afternoon after getting, I'm going to have an extra $1 million drop in my bank account in the next few days? He went out after work and had a few too many drinks, wrecked his Audi car. It was probably a $100,000 car, and got a, I don't know what you call them down in Australia, but here it's called a DUI, driving under the influence. It's like a drunk driving thing. And it's a pretty big deal here. You usually have to go get a lawyer and everything. It's not like forking over $100 or something like that for a,
no, absolutely.
Different countries have different things, but over here, it's a pretty serious thing. And so anyway, he went from this big woo to this real low, all in the space of about 6 or 7 hours. That's what we call the upper limit problem. What happens is you get a big whoosh of positive energy, and then it brings up some old fear, sometimes that go back to the early days of childhood. One particular one, I work with, since I live down here near LA, I work with quite a few actors and singers and people that you would see getting Oscars and things like that. And the funny thing is, I promise you that next time you watch the Oscars or watch the Grammys, just know that a lot of the people that are receiving those awards, even though they're brilliant artists, have a deep old belief inside that they don't deserve the good things of life. One of the most prominent, widely held, limiting fears is the fear of there's something fundamentally flawed about me, and I don't deserve love, or I don't deserve to be wealthy, or I don't deserve to have the good things of life. Those old beliefs oftentimes come from way back before you could even think for yourself.
Yeah.
And so, I'll give you another good example. I work a lot, and Katie and I work a lot with couples. We've seen probably, I think, about 4,500 couples now in our office or in our seminars. So we have
Wow.
quite a large background in people who have come to us to get some kind of relationship issue straightened out. And often what happens is the marriage or the relationship has its own upper limit problem, in the sense that they will get along fine for 2 or 3 days, and then somebody will start an argument, or somebody will not keep an agreement. Like, why didn't you pick up Kevin from soccer yesterday? Oh, I'm sorry, I got busy at work. And those kind of things where you break an agreement, or you well, infidelity, of course, is a classic upper limit problem, because there may be sometimes other reasons for it, but it always throws the energy off in a relationship when there's any kind of secret. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter if it's a
absolutely.
sexual secret or anything else. Like Freud said, secrets make you sick.
They do.
And secrets make relationships sick too. So if there's anything in your relationship that you've talked to a third party about that you haven't talked to your partner about, to me, that's a violation of the intimacy in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so the upper limit problem can affect you individually. It can affect you in relationships. It can even affect your health. A lot of people use their health and well-being of their body as their upper limit problem, in the sense that they have something good happen and then they get sick, or they have an accident. I have a case right now where a couple was in real trouble with each other about a year and a half ago. And they were almost going to call and make an appointment. Then he got COVID. So they put it off and put it off and put it off. And so he came out of that, and then they were going to make an appointment, and she got COVID. So several months later, now things are much worse, just because life got in the way. Sometimes these things happen, and right in the middle of some relationship issue, somebody will get sick, or somebody will have an accident. So oftentimes it postpones people's ability, and they keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. The thing is about relationship trouble is it's very hard to sweep it under the rug. You just cannot keep it under the rug.
Yeah.
Because you have X number of relationship interactions with your partner or with your family every week, and it's likely to come out somewhere along the line.
Yeah. And so do people, when they see that there's a challenge in the relationship, unconsciously sabotage them from creating change that is going to lead to success, because they don't believe that success is possible?
Yes.
Okay. So how do we shift this upper limit? So we have this baseline, right? This thermostat that you talk about. Can you tell us more about how we can find where our baseline is, and how can we increase that baseline to something that's healthier? Because we can be attracted to experiencing conflict in the relationship, right? Like that can be our home.
Yes. Well, I think you need to make room for conflict, and also make room for it to be resolvable quickly.
Yeah.
Because what happens here is couples will come in and they became aware of a problem 3 years ago, and then they kept putting off doing anything about it. And now it's 10 times worse, because they've been trying to keep something under the rug for 3 years. So I would say the main thing that people need to learn from this conversation is jump on it as soon as possible. Don't wait for 3 years to handle your upper limit problem. But here's the thing that happens, Kate. You're going along, and suddenly your relationship is feeling a flow of positive energy.
Yeah.
And then somebody gets scared about something or mad about something, and there goes the flow of positive energy. But almost nobody knows how to get back into it quickly. You can get back into the flow. Here we say, all you need to have is 1 10-minute sweaty conversation to get free of any kind of relationship struggle.
Yeah.
The whole thing may not dissolve in 10 minutes, but in 10 minutes, what we've found here is if you ask the right questions and the couple has the right intention, you can move through things that have been going on for 30 years, 10 minutes. And that's a beautiful thing to know, because so many people are stuck in despair in relationships. They've been stuck in a situation that isn't working for a long time.
Yeah.
And when you're in a situation that isn't working, where you don't feel that flow of positive energy, what happens then is you gradually sink into a kind of a hopelessness or despair space. And that's one of the things that when people come here, oftentimes they've been avoiding the issue for so long that they've kind of sunk into that despair that the relationship is savable or can be moved in some way. So the big thing with the upper limit problem, though, is since they all come out of fear, we need to get better at knowing how to handle fear and talk about our fear. The ideal way to talk about it is when you feel it, just say, I'm scared, or I feel nervous right now,
Yeah.
or something that refers to the actual experience you're having.
Yeah.
What a lot of people do, though, is they don't deal with the fear, and then it comes out in the form of anger oftentimes. So if you don't say to your partner, I'm afraid about ... or I was hurt about ... out of that, not saying those deeper kinds of emotions, then anger comes out.
Up.
Because anger is one of 4 expressions of fear. In other words, when you get scared, you do one of 4 things. You've heard of the fight or flight thing. So one thing is to fight. So some people, when they get scared, start a fight.
Yeah.
Some people, when they get scared, pull back and withdraw and kind of tuck back into themselves. That's the flight part. But there are 2 other things that we do when we get scared that are important too. In the animal kingdom, you see faint and freeze. And in other words, you'll see an animal when it gets scared, just freeze, try to not to move anything. And some animals even get spacey and pass out and roll over and play dead as their way of dealing with fear.
Yeah.
Like possums, for example, opossums. I don't know if you have them down there in your part of the world, but up here, they're kind of a little creature, and they roll up into a ball and pretend to be dead to protect themselves from the predator.
Predators, yeah.
Yeah, and so we call them the 4 Fs: fight, freeze, faint, flee. So remember that when you're scared, and get familiar with which one of those you do.
You're operating from.
Because it's more important to get out the deeper feelings like like fear and sadness. Don't just rely on communicating your anger in an argument. As a matter of fact, that was a huge breakthrough in my relationship with Katie. When we got together 42 years ago now, we weren't born enlightened, so we had to do a lot of work in the first 5 years or so of our relationship to learn how to tell each other the truth and listen and take responsibility for things rather than blaming the other person, and appreciate each other. So we were, we got into the same old arguments we'd gotten into in other relationships. And then on one magic day, I was criticizing Katie she had come home late. She said she was going to be home at 7:30 and she didn't get home till 8:30 or something like that. But anyway, whatever it was, I was criticizing her. Yeah. Where were you? Yeah. And all of a sudden I realized, as I was doing my thing, I realized my stomach was tight and I had butterflies in my stomach. And suddenly I realized, I sound like I'm angry. I'm acting like I'm angry, but what I actually am is afraid. This idea just occurred to me. And so I just blurted it out. I said, I'm afraid. And Katie kind of went, it was such an unusual thing that she just kind of stopped in her tracks and said, yeah, I am too, because she'd been going back at me. And all of a sudden we both were standing there. We both realized we were both afraid. And that was a huge moment because we could have continued the rest of the night, and turned the whole weekend into an argument. But by learning how to communicate in those plain, simple communications, we call them 10-second miracles here. 10-second miracle is when you quit being defensive and just say to the person,
Honesty.
I'm scared, or I don't know what to do, or, you come from your heart. You're not defending yourself,
Yes, protecting.
So those moments we call 10-second miracles because it only takes 10 seconds to communicate something that you may have been holding inside for minutes or hours or sometimes years.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this. Gay, can you tell us, often when we've been operating, say, from anger or shutting down, we're not connected to that being a fear. And people might say, no, I am angry. How do we actually come inside ourselves and understand what that fear is deep down?
Well, let me say there are 3 feeling zones in the body that tell you about 3 key feelings. The anger zone is in the back of your neck and down between your shoulder blades. It's that area that tightens up. Like if you've ever seen the hackles on a dog or a cat rise up.
Yeah.
Well, we have the same wiring. It's just we have less hair, so you don't see it stand up. But those muscles from the middle of your shoulder blades up the back of your neck, up into your jaws, those will get tight when you're angry.
Yeah.
So reference those areas: tight jaws, tight neck, headache, maybe. Those are, or tight back. Those are symptoms of anger that you're usually holding inside.
Okay.
The second feeling zone is in your chest and your throat. That's the sadness zone, where you might feel a lump in your throat when you're sad, or you might feel some heaviness in your chest, that kind of depressed feeling in your chest. That's usually related to sadness.
Yeah.
It's about loss. And it's one of the core emotions of human beings. It's one of the things that can have the biggest grip on us. I mean, I've literally had people in this office that have been holding on to a grief for decades sometimes because they didn't know how to move through it.
Yeah.
One of the things we should get taught in school, is how to deal with your emotions. We could learn that in the 1st and 2nd grade.
Yeah.
I had to wait till I was, a PhD student before they taught me anything useful about my emotions. Didn't even learn anything about that in college psychology. College psychology was all about learning how to train rats and stuff like that,
Yeah.
And I've never had a situation since I was a freshman in college where a rat needed training in my work. I found a lot of human beings that needed training. Well, let me tell you about the 3rd feeling zone. The 3rd feeling zone is down in your solar plexus and your belly area. It's the area where you feel butterflies in your stomach, or if you feel your belly tighten, that's a good sign you're scared. So those butterfly sensations are usually sensations coming from your gut with digestion stopping. I don't know if you know this or not, but when you're scared, your digestion stops. And the reason for that, going back millions of years, is digestion takes up a lot of energy. And so if a bear comes running into your campfire in the middle of eating, your body learns to shut off the digestion so you can run and escape the bear.
Yeah.
Nowadays in real life, we don't encounter many bears coming in for dinner, but what happens is, like in my family, I hope it wasn't like this in yours, but oftentimes dinner time was where battles would break out. And so it wasn't always serene and easy going around the dinner table. So I think a lot of people get their eating disorders from things that go on around digestion when they're growing up.
Yeah.
But what we need to do, Kate, is get familiar with anger zone, sadness zone, and fear zone so we can tell immediately what's going on in our bodies.
Yeah.
This is a slightly crude example, but almost everybody, by the time they go into the 1st grade, has learned how to distinguish when they have to go to the bathroom, right? So you can learn that by the time you're 2 or 3 years old, usually.
Yeah.
And yet we could learn to listen to the same feelings of other kinds in our bodies. If we can recognize that feeling, we could learn to recognize when we're scared or when we're sad or when we're angry about something. It's just a matter of training ourselves. And actually, we have a thing here we call the Conscious Kids curriculum that we give to elementary schools who want to learn how to teach these kind of things to their children. And so I'm very excited about the next generation of kids that are learning things that you and I may have had to wait until we were grown-ups to learn to feel, to learn to communicate.
Absolutely. I love that. So if we are disconnected from tapping into these feelings and the noise is so loud of often giving situations meaning without tapping into what we're actually feeling, how can we tap into those feelings?
Well, we teach a lot of breathing work here. Breathing is a really good way to breathe a little more freely and deeply, is a really good way to get in touch with to be more sensitive to your body. Yeah. Because most of us kind of live in a small, not really breathing deeply, not really celebrating life. A lot of us kind of go around kind of with our chins tucked down in our chest and not breathing very much. One of the first things you can do is take some big, easy, deep, slow breaths that will always sensitize you more to what's going on in your body. Yeah. We have a whole training program here. In fact, we just started one of our new courses, which we call Body Intelligence. And it's learning about all these things. We take 8 weeks, 3 hours of meetings. So take 4 hours to teach people how to go through these things and how to tune into them. But they're all learnable. And, we have the instructions in all our books too. So like I have a book called Conscious Breathing that if you want to learn about breathing, you can get. And we have, of course, our main relationship book, Conscious Loving, and our main personal transformation book, Big Leap, which has all the instructions in it too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this. I have a question from some of our listeners, and that is if we have this upper limit problem on our ability to attract a healthy relationship into our life, why would someone love their partner that they have, but constantly have an interest or desire to cheat?
Well, it gets down to a very important word in relationship, and it's called commitment. And so a lot of people don't know how to make meaningful commitments in relationships. Like, remember the old marriage vow of, I promise to love, honor, and obey you till death do us part. Yeah. Well, I remember my aunt. She was a very funny woman. She got married to my Uncle Hal. And after a year or so, I asked her, how was the marriage going? And she said, well, we're having some stuff come up because we didn't understand each other going in. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I promised to love, honor, and obey him. That's part of everybody's marriage ceremony. I didn't realize he meant that literally, that I was supposed to then obey him, and so they got into a lot of control struggles about who's right, who's got the best way to do this. So a lot of people make the wrong kind of commitment when they get into a relationship. They commit to, I commit to love you always. Okay. Well, that's a setup for failure, because what we need to do is make commitments to things we actually have some control over. Like, I commit to telling you the truth always. Yeah. And you commit, and I commit to learning to listen to each other generously without attacking the other person, without interrupting the other person. You would not believe how many couples come in here and they just interrupt each other constantly. Yeah. And so we often have to kind of work with that. Just the ability to listen to the other person until the other person finishes speaking. A lot of people don't have that basic skill.
Yeah.
And so one thing that's important is to make commitments to the right kind of stuff. So committing to speaking honestly is very important.
Yeah.
Committing to taking responsibility when conflict comes up. That's extremely important because most couples' arguments are a race to occupy the victim position. One person says, hey, you did this and this and this to me. And the other person says, no, wait a minute, I'm the victim here. You did this and this and this to me. No, I'm the victim. And so they go back and forth about who is the victim. Who's the victim? Who's the perpetrator? Who's the victim? Who's the perpetrator? And that will never lead to happiness, because happiness can only come through taking responsibility for things that you're blaming the other person for. So in other words, instead of saying, why do you always criticize me to your partner? You need to ask, why did I choose a relationship where I get criticized a lot? And, we have people ask those kind of questions all the time. And it's surprising that a lot of people have never thought of it, because a lot of times people say, oh, my dad was the most negative, abusive person I ever met. No wonder I picked somebody like that.
Yeah.
Because you're usually going to pick somebody like one of your parents, or go to the extreme of picking somebody that's completely opposite, and one of the big problems too in relationship, Kate, is a lot of people don't understand that the other person is not your personal improvement project. That a lot of people, when they get into relationship, thinks that gives them a license then to improve the other person every chance they get, or tell them how to do life better. And what will often happen is a person like what happened with me and Katie, when I got into my relationship with her 42 years ago, I was extremely intellectual. I'd already written a bunch of books, and I come from a scientific psychology background, research and that kind of thing. So I wasn't as used to being in touch with my emotions back then. I think I invited Katie into my life unconsciously, partly so I could learn more about emotions, because she's very, she can tell you a lot about her feelings and can tell you when she's scared or sad or angry or things like that. So she was much more conversant with her emotions than I was. So you had Mr. Logical and Ms. Emotional trying to teach each other the best way to be. I was trying to make her more logical, and she was trying to make me more emotional. And both of us were resisting it like crazy because we both wanted to be right. But we realized after a couple of years, maybe even though I'm very logical and you're very emotional, maybe life has brought us together so we could be learning partners from each other rather than criticize. That was a big day, because that was really the day I started to learn more about my emotions instead of being defensive about them. I accepted Katie as my teacher in that area, and she accepted me as her teacher, but it wasn't done from a place of trying to improve each other. It was done from a place of wanting to grow together.
Yeah, absolutely. A completely different lens shifts the way that you feel and show up in your relationship. I love that. I have one other question. I don't know how we're going for time. I have another question, and that is for the people that feel like they've lost hope in their relationship and they don't think it's fixable. They feel that maybe they've fallen out of love, or it's just not mendable and not worth it. What would you say to that person, and how do you approach that situation? How do you know if it is actually solvable, and if you should invest in solving it?
Yeah. Well, we've been doing this a long time, so we actually have some statistics on this. And about out of every 5 couples that we work with, there's usually one, about 20% of the couples that we see, where we don't think we can help them. And it's often because they've been not dealing with the problem for so long that both of them have developed a contempt for each other.
Mm.
And when there's contempt in the mix, it's very hard to get people uncontempted. Again, I don't know if there's such a word, but
it works.
One of our relationship research colleagues, John Gottman, who's up at the University of Washington, he has a thing he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that spell doom for relationships: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and withdrawal. And what I've found is that people can be trained out of defensiveness, and people can be helped to not criticize each other. We do that all the time here. We help people go to 0 criticism and blame relationships. And so it's not that hard once you kind of learn the moves. But once people have kind of settled into contempt for each other, boy, I found it very difficult. So that would probably be one thing people, do I feel genuine contempt for my partner?
Yeah.
Like, has he come home drunk 58 times and I told him not to do it the first time, and I told him not to do it the 58th time, and I'm not ever going to tell him again. That kind of thing, that kind of contempt that's settled in. If you're feeling that, or you sense your partner's feeling that, that's a tough one to get beyond. So I'm not going to come out and say you should break up at that point, but I haven't seen people get out from under that one very much.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. For the people that are coming to the conclusion within themselves, maybe monogamy is just not for me, and maybe I'm meant to be in open relationships or something like that. How do you know if it's coming from an alignment place, choosing from alignment, or choosing from a place of avoiding fear, avoiding past trauma, or avoiding actually looking at your wounds?
Okay. Some of your listeners may not like this answer, but in my opinion, monogamy is the only thing that works. It's the only thing that allows you to bring the maximum amount of energy into the relationship to change your lives with it. The problem with non-monogamy, polyamory, or polygamy, or whatever you call it, is that it keeps you from making that singular, whole being, wholehearted, whole-spirited commitment to another person. And if you've got the back door open, you got one foot out the back door and 2 windows open, it keeps you from organizing all your energy in this relationship.
Yeah.
So I believe that anything but monogamy is a flight from intimacy.
Yeah, I absolutely love that answer. And I think there's so much depth from commitment.
Yeah, the thing about commitment too, Kate, that everyone needs to know is there's conscious commitment, where I say to my partner, okay, I commit to being transparently honest with you about my feelings. And your partner says, I commit to being transparently honest with my feelings with you. So you have a conscious commitment.
Yeah.
One thing we also have a lot of times, based on our old programming, are unconscious commitments that, like you were talking about infidelity. Well, I was working with a man who was having an affair, or who had been having an affair for 3 years. And in the course of working with him, we of course had him confess that, and that caused a big in the relationship. But here's how I know honesty is always the best policy. His wife, during that 3-year period, had gained 40 pounds, and that became an issue between them because he was a very fit guy. And so it became a very convenient thing to say, okay, I'm having this affair because my wife doesn't take care of herself. She won't go to the gym and all that kind of thing. Well, within a month after he confessed and they worked on it, the 40 pounds basically fell off her. She lost a pound or so a day for the next 30 or 40 days. It was stunning. And why is that? Well, see, I think when there's dishonesty in a relationship, both people have to react to it with some kind of unconscious pattern.
Yes.
And in his case, he gave himself back pain. He was always going to the chiropractor and getting massages. So his way of dealing with his lack of integrity was to get back pain. Her way, because she had said, you know, what's going on? Is there something going on? And he would say, oh, no, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. Her way of dealing that was through food. And so, but it could have easily been something else. It didn't have to be food, but that was just a pattern of hers. So when he became more honest and took the wrench out of the middle of the intimacy, suddenly she was free to return to her original body. And she just lost weight without even hardly changing her diet over the next month or two. So unconscious commitment is a big deal. And the only way to find out your unconscious commitment has to do with the very easiest way you can find it out. And that is to look at any negative results you produce or you are producing.
Okay.
So, you know, that's the simple way, because that's where your unconscious intentions and unconscious commitments come to the surface. That's where you can see them.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so once we highlight them, we can shift the commitment to that.
You can shift to the conscious commitment then, but it's hard to do until you've taken responsibility for the unconscious commitment.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to quickly ask you one more question if we've got time. And that is, if we do have a fear of commitment and do sabotage this, our experiences because of that fear, how can we mend that fear of commitment and actually enjoy commitment?
Yes. Well, first of all, everything needs to be out on the table in the sense of, in any relationship, anytime there's a withheld truth or a withheld feeling, or anytime you tuck something inside rather than just talking about it freely, that causes ripples in the relationship and glitches in the flow of intimacy. So what we need to do as soon as we can possibly learn how is make those 10-second miracle communications where you say whatever is the truth inside. Sometimes it's a difficult, sweaty one, like, honey, I got to tell you, I've been having an affair with my secretary every Tuesday for the last 3 years. You know, but those things are better to get out and sort through them rather than hold them inside. Nobody ever got healthy and happy through holding secrets.
Yeah.
I haven't ever seen it in my 77 years on this planet. I've been working with people now since 1968. So my math is not good, but what is that, about 52 years, something like that?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen any situation where lying and blaming causes people to get happy.
And freedom. Creates freedom.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Where can we connect with you? Where can we find more about you?
Yes, Hendricks.com is the best place, HENDRICKS.com. There you can find out about all of our stuff we do. And we have a lot of free resources over at our nonprofit foundation too, but you can find that at Hendricks.com. And come see us sometime when you're over here in the US. I really appreciate what you're doing. How did you get so wise at such a young age, Kate?
Oh, experiences. They shape us up, that's for sure.
Well, good on you for learning from your ways of being in relationship. And thanks for living in your genius zone.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.